Mr. Trudeau, are you trying to rebrand the carbon tax? Are you trying to rebrand the carbon tax?
C'est la journée nationale de mémoire et d'action contre l'islamophobie. C'est une journée où on pense aux familles et aux victimes de l'attentat de la mosquée à Québec il y a 7 ans. Et on se redédie, comme on devrait se redédier à chaque jour, à la lutte contre l'islamophobie, à la lutte contre l'intolérance et la haine sous toutes ses formes. Today is the National Day of Remembrance and Action Against Islamophobia in memory of the families and victims of the terrorist attack in Quebec City 7 years ago. On this day and every day, we need to rededicate ourselves to fighting against extremism, intolerance, and hatred in all its forms.
Is your government trying to rebrand the carbon tax?
Good afternoon. I just wanted to take up an opportunity to have a discussion on the latest with respect to our ongoing efforts with UNRWA. But I wanted to begin really by addressing the leader of the official opposition's irresponsible and unprecedented comments with respect to UNRWA, calling UNRWA a terrorist organization. It undermines our work with United Nations bodies and our ongoing humanitarian work to deliver much-needed aid and support to Palestinian civilians. And you would think that after the Ambassador Bridge incident, the leader of the official opposition would learn from his mistake and not go over the top and make irresponsible and reckless statements, and in this case he's done the same thing.
But at the same time, one would argue that maybe the government, didn't call them terrorist organization, but you did suspend the financing.
There's a difference between valuing the work of UNRWA and working with the United Nations in general, which UNRWA is part of, to continue to also and work with other trusted international partners and Canadian organizations to deliver much needed support and aid to the Palestinian people, innocent civilians. There's a difference between that and calling a United Nations body a terrorist organization. That is irresponsible and reckless. What we are doing is taking these allegations very, very seriously. These are disturbing allegations. We have very serious concerns about those allegations, and I expressed Canada's concerns about those allegations to the head of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini. UNRWA and the United Nations system is launching an investigation, and the proper thing to do is to wait for the results of that investigation while we implement a pause.
Aren't you tarring the entire thousands of people working there by deciding to cut the funding just on the basis of maybe 12 people doing something wrong?
We are pausing funding pending the results of an investigation conducted by the United Nations system itself. And I've indicated to you that we take these allegations extremely seriously. They're very disturbing allegations. We will await for the results of this investigation. While we do that, we're taking the prudent measure of continuing to work with other partners, including the World Health Organization, the World Food Program, which are UN agencies too, as well as Canadian organizations in the Humanitarian Coalition, UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, and many others, to continue to deliver much-needed aid to the Palestinian people.
Respond to people who say this is actually collective punishment.
This is in response to an investigation that is being conducted by the United Nations system itself. We await the results of that investigation. We value the work of UNRWA on the ground, and we have historically worked with them to deliver much-needed aid. And we await the results of this investigation. But we have to take these allegations very seriously. They're very disturbing allegations. And our job is to wait for the results of that investigation. While we do that, we'll continue to sustain our levels of support to Palestinian civilians who are impacted by this conflict. And we're doing that through other partners who are also delivering that much-needed aid and support. Final question?
They're saying that the pausing of the funding will mean that in, I think, 9 days from now or 10 days, there will be no longer aid provided in the Gaza Strip.
Let me make it absolutely clear. We are not reducing our levels of support and humanitarian funding to the Palestinian civilians who are caught in this conflict, and we're doing so by working and continuing to work, I may add, with many other partners, including the World Food Program, UNICEF, World Health Organization, and Doctors Without Borders, and the Canadian Humanitarian Coalition. We'll continue to do that. Our levels of support for the Palestinian civilians will not be diminished by this. We will continue to sustain that while we await the results of this investigation. And we have worked and recognize the importance and presence of UNRWA in the Palestinian territories. Thank you so much.
Bonjour, hello, et bienvenue à la nouvelle session de notre Parlement. Hello, and I'm just wanting to give some quick commentary and then pass it to Jonathan Pedneau and Mike Morris for some other quick review of issues. I just wanted to make a comment on behalf of the Green Party of Canada on Madam Justice Hogue's inquiry. I wanted to put it on the record that I also applied for intervener status in the foreign interference inquiry, and my application for intervener status was not granted. I want to confirm that I did pursue the steps that were set out in David Johnston's report as independent special rapporteur, and as a leader of an opposition party in this place, I did pursue the avenue to have top-secret security clearance. So my participation in any review of foreign interference is already covered by the obligations that I undertook to receive top-secret security clearance. There are, at this point, of course, 3 leaders in the House who have that clearance. Of course, the Prime Minister, the leader of the NDP, and myself. And I'm disappointed that Justice Hogue did not extend intervener status to the issues that I raised of concern. I also wrote her back in September to ask if there was no way that the earlier work done by David Johnston couldn't be a basis on which we move forward so that work wasn't wasted. I haven't yet received a reply to that, but I'm very keen to see what happens, and we will be carefully tracking as best we can, without intervener status, the work of the Hogue inquiry. I now turn it over to Jonathan Pedneau, votre petit commentaire, et après ça, je vais donner la parole à Mike Morris.
Merci, Elisabeth. Brièvement, on a demandé de faire partie, de pouvoir avoir le statut d'intervenant à la commission Hogue, une commission qui est importante pour tous les Canadiens d'un océan à l'autre. Plusieurs de ces Canadiens, bien évidemment, votent pour le Parti vert, donc ce serait important pour nous de pouvoir intervenir sur cette question qui est fondamentale à la vie démocratique dans le pays. C'est dommage d'avoir reçu une réponse négative de la part de la commissaire, de la juge Hogue, dans le cas présent, et on va continuer à suivre les travaux de cette commission de très près, parce que la démocratie canadienne doit impliquer tous les partis politiques à la Chambre des communes. Je veux aussi revenir brièvement sur C-50, un projet de loi malheureusement trop peu connu des Canadiens, qui vise à assurer des emplois durables pour les jeunes générations de Canadiens qui rentrent sur le marché du travail dans un contexte économique, bien évidemment, où on se doit d'amener une transition écologique. Là, les conservateurs, tout au long de décembre, ils ont crié guerre contre Noël, la guerre contre Noël. Puis ce qui est intéressant, c'est que le 7 décembre, c'est comme si le Grinch est venu visiter le Parlement canadien. Puis là, soudainement, les libéraux puis les néo-démocrates ont volé le cadeau des générations futures pour en donner un aux conservateurs en créant un délai absolument incompréhensible de 15 ans sur l'implémentation de ce programme qui vise à créer des emplois durables pour les Canadiens. Comment ça se fait que pendant 15 ans, on n'aura pas de vision puis de direction de la part du gouvernement sur cet enjeu-là? C'est quelque chose qui nous inquiète beaucoup, puis on va poser des questions nécessaires au gouvernement. Just want to come back briefly on the C-50 case, a case that highlighted once again progressive parties failing future generations. C-50 is the Sustainable Jobs Act, which called initially in a prior version on the government to establish an action plan by 2025, in fact 2026, but at the end of 2025, and that was postponed to 2040. These are 15 years that we're now losing because the NDP and the Liberals decided to vote with the Conservatives. Interestingly enough, the Conservatives were talking about the war on Christmas, while the Grinch did visit Parliament on December 7th and stole this precious initiative necessary to future generations and gave a gift to the oil-captured conservative interests.
Oui, merci, Jonathan. As Greens, we're going to continue to be here to focus on the priorities of Canadians. One of those priorities, of course, is responding to the climate crisis and centering the needs of workers across the country as we do it. The legislation that Jonathan just spoke about is long-delayed legislation to center workers in a just transition. That bill had already been diluted significantly leading up to committee study, and just so disappointing that then at committee, in the cover of night, when clause-by-clause amendments weren't even being shared, it was under a parliamentary procedure where Canadians didn't even get to hear the terms of the amendment before it was voted down, and one of those amendments, already on a diluted bill, further delays an action plan another 15 years. As Greens, we're going to continue to call out the need for parliamentarians to work together to address this crisis and others that we're in the midst of. I'll turn it back to Elizabeth for any questions that you all might have.
Bonjour, Madame May. Je me demandais sur la décision du gouvernement du Canada de geler les transferts de fonds à UNRWA. Le chef conservateur a avancé que UNRWA est une organisation, carrément une organisation terroriste. Je me demandais quelle était votre vision de ça.
Ce n'est pas vrai que UNRWA est une organisation terroriste. C'est clair que UNRWA c'est une organisation des Nations Unies. Il y a c'est plus de 50 ans que les peuples palestiniens ont besoin d'aide seulement disponible à cause de UNRWA. We think that the participation by any human being, much less a UN staff member, in Hamas's actions is unacceptable, deplorable. It almost goes without saying. Certainly the Secretary General of the United Nations has made it very clear this is not acceptable. Those individuals have been removed from their posts. There is an investigation underway. But this is collective punishment, and that is not acceptable. As hard as it may be, our allies, like Norway, like Sweden and others, are continuing to support Israel, but they also need to, and we need to step up for humanitarian aid into Gaza, and UNRWA is indispensable in delivering that aid, and I urge our government to reconsider. Je vais seulement ajouter quelque chose très vitement que on the question of Bill C-50. I will be asking in question period today, not a spoiler alert, but by the time my question comes around, most of you will have gone. So I just want to mention that Bill C-50, the Liberals and the New Democrats owe us an explanation. They owe the Canadian people, they owe every Canadian who cares about climate an explanation for this bizarre decision. The Conservatives, it gets really weird when you get into the detail, the Conservatives in committee and clause by clause did not vote for their own amendment. The Liberals and the NDP did. I think it shows what it may be that they didn't know what they were voting on. We need to know. Meanwhile, the bill has changed, and it is now by December 31st, 2040. In other words, sometime in January 2041, we might see a sustainable jobs plan. This is unacceptable. So thanks for your time. Merci.
Si je peux me permettre brièvement d'ajouter, quand on voit des tactiques comme celle-là de la part du Parti conservateur qui va domper 20 000 amendements sur un projet de loi en particulier, puis que les débats continuent jusqu'à 2 heures du matin, avec des députés qui, évidemment, sont fatigués puis veulent retourner à la maison aussi rapidement que possible. C'est extraordinairement inquiétant pour la santé de la démocratie canadienne, le type de tactique américaine, là, républicaine, qu'on voit de la part des conservateurs qui s'infiltrent dans notre processus démocratique et législatif. Qu'est-ce que ça va être demain matin sur l'avortement, sur le droit des personnes homosexuelles, quand on est maintenant capable, avec un gouvernement, avec un parti conservateur comme celui-là, qui n'hésite pas à utiliser tous les canaux possibles et imaginables pour faire passer des petites vites, là, ça va donner quoi demain matin si jamais ils arrivent dans une position de pouvoir? Ça, c'est la question qui, je pense, doit inquiéter tous les Canadiens aujourd'hui. Merci.
Merci.
I was in West Bank, and I have seen firsthand the work which UNRWA is doing in West Bank, as well as I was at one of their school in one of the camps in Amman, Jordan. So UNRWA has been doing a really very important work, and they are doing it. And it is I think the helpline for the people in Gaza. Gaza is in humanitarian crisis, and I know there have been allegations. It's important that those allegations are seriously looked into, but we should not penalize those 2 million Palestinian people living in Gaza who are relying on UNRWA. Like, UNRWA schools are being used to provide shelter to thousands and thousands of, like, no school is operative or providing education. I was told by the director of education in Amman that the books in Gaza are being used as a fuel by many families because they don't have anything else. And they are providing shelter to thousands of people, like near Rafah border. Those, many of the UNRWA locations have been bombed during the Gaza crisis. Like, so many of their employees have been killed. If there are some criminal charges against some people, and I think UNRWA did a right step to, like, finish, like, I think they have terminated the contracts of those people. It should be investigated. No, like, second question on that. But people who are relying on UNRWA in Gaza, where people don't have, like, water, don't have, like, food to eat, and are in a humanitarian crisis, like, people, like, many people are starving to death. So I, like, feel that UNRWA should not be, like, people should not be penalized for that.
Because right now, funding has been suspended. Do you agree with that? Do you think it's the right thing to do? It's temporary, but still.
See, the thing is that, like, whatever money was announced for UNRWA, like, because of the Gaza situation, has already been gone. So this is in regards to the ongoing funding for the new cycle to be coming up, and that was not coming until few months. So I hope this investigation is completed beforehand, so that, like, whatever funding Canada is giving to UNRWA should roll to them, because this more, like, it's needed more than ever in that region. Thank you.
Écoutez, c'est sûr que ce sont des allégations qui sont sérieuses. S'il y a des fonctionnaires des Nations Unies qui ont participé aux attentats sauvages du 7 octobre dernier, ça requiert effectivement des mesures énergiques. Cela dit, on sait dans quelle situation humanitaire catastrophique se trouve la population de Gaza. Est-ce que c'est le bon moment? Est-ce qu'il n'y aurait pas eu lieu éventuellement de prendre une mesure suspensive, d'éventuellement envisager des représailles ultérieurement si les choses s'avéraient être...
Donc de continuer d'aider en attendant de faire la lumière? Exactement,
exactement. Alors je trouve, puis on aura assurément l'occasion de poser des questions au cours des prochains jours à ce sujet, parce que on peut difficilement imaginer une crise humanitaire plus terrible que celle qui a cours présentement dans la bande de Gaza. Et le gouvernement canadien a beau nous dire, bien, on maintient notre financement en aide humanitaire à la bande de Gaza. C'est sûr que l'agence est sur place, a ses entrées, a ses contacts. Par qui on va faire transiter cette aide-là? On sait à quel point c'est extrêmement difficile de faire entrer l'aide humanitaire à Gaza. Donc, par qui on va faire transiter cette aide? Et on sait par ailleurs que le gouvernement avait déjà réduit ses budgets à l'agence, comme à la plupart des organisations d'aide internationale. À partir du moment où on a décidé de réduire pour la toute première fois depuis des décennies notre budget d'aide publique au développement, ça allait évidemment avoir des répercussions dans tous les domaines, puis ça en a eu déjà auprès de l'agence. Donc, est-ce la bonne décision? C'est sûr que, encore une fois, si ces allégations devaient s'avérer exactes, ça requiert des actions. Mais est-ce que c'est le bon moment à ce stade-ci? Je ne crois pas. Ah, mais eux, ils maintiennent cette ligne-là depuis des années, là. Ils maintiennent cette ligne-là depuis des années.
On attend à dire vraiment qu'UNRWA est une organisation terroriste. Il a dit ça hier dans son discours. Je sais comment.
Ben, en fait, moi, je ne suis pas surpris parce que, comme je vous dis, ça fait plusieurs années qu'ils nous tiennent un discours analogue. Il y a de cela à peu près 2 ou 3 ans, ils ont fait tout un tintouin autour du fait que l'UNRWA aurait financé des manuels scolaires qui pouvaient véhiculer un certain nombre d'informations pour le moins discutables. Le Canada a demandé demander des comptes à l'agence à ce moment-là. L'agence a retiré son soutien à la production de ces ouvrages. Donc, jusqu'à présent, il n'y avait pas lieu de penser qu'il pouvait y avoir autre chose que, appelons ça, des erreurs administratives. De là à qualifier l'agence d'agence terroriste, comme les conservateurs ont tendance à le faire dans l'inflation verbale à laquelle ils nous ont habitués. Je pense qu'il y a un pas qu'eux seuls parviennent à franchir aussi aisément. Si des individus, membres de l'agence, ont pu commettre des gestes terroristes, je pense qu'il ne faut pas mettre tout le monde dans le même bain et prétendre que l'agence au complet est une agence terroriste. Il y a peut-être effectivement des éléments corrompus à l'intérieur de l'agence, comme il peut y en avoir dans n'importe quelle organisation. Si c'est le cas, il faut faire le ménage, puis il faut apporter les correctifs qui s'imposent. Ça fait plaisir.
What do you think of Pierre Poilievre calling UNRWA a terrorist organization? UNRWA, I should say. Sorry.
Well, I would disagree with that. It's not a terrorist organization. It is a United Nations organization. We have, in the case of Canada, over several governments obviously had some concerns with UNRWA. We've been supporters. I don't speak, obviously, for the government, but this is the key lifeline right now for the people of Gaza. The government is pausing because of what has happened. That some employees apparently were active with Hamas. Others were killed. So it's a very difficult time. But I don't see UNRWA as a terrorist organization.
Do you think that it was the right decision to suspend funding for the time of the investigation?
I think, like many decisions, these are often coordinated with allies, and I'm sure people are trying to get to the bottom of things. But UNRWA has its uses, and as I say, in my previous life, I've served several governments, and UNRWA has been very key to support in the Middle East.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Foreign interference inquiries is a good thing to have. Is it a good thing for your party to have full standing? Just taking the temperature.
Absolutely. The only reason they're doing the inquiry is because the Conservatives demanded it. And we definitely need to understand what happened in the last couple of elections so we can prevent foreign interference in the coming election.
And is it okay to just be an intervener at this inquiry, or does your party need full standing?
I think we need full standing. It's clear that there were several members, like Kenny Chu, who were actually impacted by foreign interference. And so I think that we need to be at the table. Thanks.